Hey everyone, my name is Taryn and thank you so much for stopping by my channel, Nicole Flower House. Alright, it's time to feed the worms their first dinner. I did end up adding some extra bedding. It was coconut coir. That's something that Sub Pod recommends as one of their favorite mediums for bedding. And I realized after I put the paper in last week that there wasn't enough. Let's go walk through my cut flower garden and see what has changed from last week. My calendula spot looks pretty good. I'm a little surprised at how good these are doing because I thought the heat would have taken them out. This is my first year growing a huge bed of calendula like this, so I'm really loving how it's turning out and it's continuing to surprise me, so I'll take as many blooms as I can get. Here is an update on the Wizard of Oz dahlias. We have more blooms on the way. I can't wait to see what these ones look like. These plants are very young, so maybe as they mature and grow up a little bit, they'll produce blooms that are more typical of the plant variety. The rest of the dahlias in this bed are also continuing to grow. My volunteer dahlias are way ahead of these ones, but hopefully they'll still give me blooms in the fall. Here is the first bed of dill. No blooms on these right now. These are looking pretty tall and leggy, so I think I'm going to prune them back and let them branch out a little more. The dill in this bed is looking a lot healthier. It has some very pretty blooms. Down here I have a ton of basil planted for the foliage and eventually it'll flower. The foliage on this opal basil is so pretty. I love this deep purple. My cucumbers are finally starting to climb the trellis. And there are a few basil plants with flowers. I'm still waiting on the opal basil to get flowers because I love them. They're so cute with their purple blossoms. This one in the corner here is a marigold. It should be blooming soon and it has very tall stems, this variety, so I really like it. Now this is one of my tomato rows and I have lots of fruit coming on the tomatoes, but right in front of the tomatoes I planted a whole row of sage, which I love to use as foliage in my cut flower arrangements. Here is the Desdemona rose. I have pruned all the kale that was around it. And I've also tied back the leeks and the dahlias that were kind of crowding this out. So it has a lot more space now. Next year, I definitely plan on not planting as many annuals in this area, so this rose has a lot more space. This is going to be really pretty when it blooms, this spray here with all the buds. Next to these leeks, I have a volunteer dahlia. No buds yet. It's kind of sticking out at the edge of the bed here, but I did tie it up right here to give it some support. It may need another tie higher up eventually. And here are my pepper plants. They're looking really tall and nice. You'll notice on these trellises, I did take out all the sweet peas. They weren't doing well in the heat and they had a ton of aphids, so it was just time for those to come out. This nasturtium has a lot more room now. I might put a butternut squash here and let it climb this trellis. This dahlia is going to give me another bloom very soon, maybe 3-4 days. Now if you wanted to take these buds off, you could, to let it focus on this one, but I like when there's multiple blooms, so I'm going to leave those on. It has even more blooms in the back over here. The coloring on these is so pretty. I can't wait to see this one. It's got a nice blush pink on it. Here is my favorite little zinnia patch. It's so crowded out, but I can't help it. I love how wild and full it is. Even if I can't use these for flowers, I just really love it, and I'm probably gonna leave it pretty full like it is. This is a cupcake blush cosmos tucked in down here. The corner of this bed has sage, and I should be getting some blooms soon on this one. I think I'm going to call this rose my miracle rose. Of course, I don't know the variety, but the comeback it made just blows my mind every time I see it, so it's still looking gorgeous. I also did some pruning around this rose and took down all the calendula. I just cut it way back. I left the plants in to see if they would branch and rebloom, but I wanted to give that rose a lot more space. Further into the bed, I have some cosmos plants that are looking really nice. Got a pink one over here, and the one on this side is called Purity. I have some zinnias that aren't blooming quite yet. And then this Celosia is just really taking off. It's about time for me to plant a succession of zinnias, and I'm going to do that by direct sowing to see if those work out a little better than my transplants did. This cosmos right here looks like it's establishing and really healthy, but this one in the corner, not so much. This bed with all the cool weather flowers like the snapdragons is doing so good right now. It's holding up to our heat really well. I'm also really happy with the way this green mesh wire on here is supporting these flowers. So I think what I'm going to do is measure a piece that will fit between my two PVC hoops and just cover the top of the bed. And I would like to leave maybe a 4-inch space at the bottom that's open, that'll let me get my hand into all the beds. Then I can just pull the stems right out of the top. That way the flowers are supported. And I also already have a lot of this green mesh laying around, so I won't have to buy anything. And I think it'll be a lot easier to get spent flowers out of that mesh so I can reuse it and not have to buy flower netting every season. This silver mesh is okay, but it's not even in the spacing. These spaces down here at the bottom are way too tiny, especially if there's branching happening, to get flowers in and out of there. So I think I'll go with the green mesh. This rose has buds on it again, but it also has a lot of this fungal black spot on it, so I'm going to have to prune this back yet again. I think it's also just part of our climate here in 7B. We're very warm, it's very humid. It just causes the perfect environment for that to develop. This bed is a mixture of stock, onions, and volunteer dahlias. There's a dahlia. Here's some stock. I'm still kind of waiting to see if the ones I've cut off rebloom or not. This dahlia is starting to get its first buds. I've noticed this year that the first flowers always seem to be a little bit misshapen, but then the following flushes look a lot better, so we'll see how this one progresses. There's a ton of buds on this dahlia, and there's a really pretty orange bloom at the very top of this one. It's almost as tall as me. It's kind of hard for me to see. I don't want to break the stem. Very pretty burnt orange color. Eucalyptus look probably about the same as we saw in last time. Not much change since last week. There's a lot of stock blooming down here. I might be able to get about 4 or 5 bouquets out of the garden this time, so maybe I'll do that. Here is my sweet potato bed, but I have a spot right here on this trellis that I can plant with something, so I need to do that. I also have an empty planter in between my beans right here, so I need to plant something there. Maybe a zinnia or a cosmos, bachelor's button, I don't know. This bed was the potato bed. Here's that Love and a Puff vine. And it turns out all my potatoes were dying back because they weren't actually sick. They were just ready to harvest. So I dug a ton of potatoes out of here and I've replanted it with sunflower seeds. And those have already sprouted up. They're so cute. Little baby sunflowers. Here's my sad cosmos bed. I've said 1,000 times I'm going to plant seeds in here and I have not done it yet, so there's always next week. One thing I think I am going to try is adding a layer of Coco Loco to the top of this. Coco Loco is a brand by Fox Farm. I really like it. It has a lot of nutrition and mycorrhizal fungi in it, and it might just be what these cosmos need to get going. Hopefully once my worm bin is up and running and the compost corrals in the back have produced enough compost, I can use a combination of those things and bulk garden blend soil and leaves that I can get delivered from the city to use in my garden boxes instead of having to buy these potting mixes, just because I like to use something that I can make on hand, which is like super local, the most local you can get. It's just one of my goals to someday not have to do that, so I don't have to get these heavy bags shipped in from somewhere and then have the trash of the plastic bags. But building compost takes time, and I'm taking the time to set that up now. But until then, we're going to use the Coco Loco. No buds on these yet. I've not grown China aster or strawflower before, so I'm not really sure what to look for. But the foliage looks really nice and green. Here's the Frosted Explosion ornamental grass. I'll just pull this one out. Look how cool that is. Isn't that fun? That'll be a great textural element to add to bouquets. I know this is a flower garden tour, but look how pretty these tomatoes are. They're a fluted tomato that looks like pumpkins. I love them. This Celosia could probably use some nutrition as well. Once I cut these spikes off the top, it'll start branching like the other ones and maybe take off a lot better. I do really like these blush muted colors on them. Look at these pathways. I spent almost 10 days weeding the weeds out of these pathways. I have an order of wood chips placed for Chip Drop, which is a service that will bring you free wood chips from arborists. So instead of having to dispose of the wood chips, they'll bring them to you. I got almost all of it done, but there's still one section left right here that I need to do. And then a small section over here that I'd like to finish up. The only seedlings I have left are these few trays. And these are perennials. They're mostly herbs: lavender, rosemary, thyme. I have some eryngium and some St. John's wort. And these are okay in their little pots because perennials are very slow growing when they're small. So I've got some time to find these a spot. Let me show you the dahlias in the back 3 garden beds real quick. This dahlia right here where we pinched it last week is starting to branch. I have 2 bays in my compost corral nearly full from all the cleaning out and weeding that I've been doing in the garden. So maybe next year I'll have some really good compost. So unfortunately, the pile of fence panels is really rotting down quicker than we can use it. And the quality of the boxes that I'm building are lasting half a season, maybe 1 season. So I'm thinking these are going to have to go. It's really just not working out. And instead of wasting a ton of time trying to deconstruct these and build something that's only going to last me a few months, I'll just cut my losses and move on to other projects. Plus, I'm 100% sure there are snakes living in there. There are snakes living in there because I have found them, and that is scary. So I need to get those piles out of here as quickly as possible. I have a peach growing on one of my peach trees. The right thing to do would probably be to take that off so that the plant can establish a better root system, but I don't have the heart, so I'm gonna leave it on there. The sweet peas have also been taken off this trellis, and I have a nice empty spot right here. I may do some more butternut squash. It'll be nice to have something to complement this dahlia that's growing on the other side of the trellis. The Strawberry Hill Rose looking very healthy and green, and there are finally some buds on it, so hopefully those beautiful pink blooms aren't long to follow behind. Alright, that is it for today's garden tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and the best way you can support my channel is to subscribe and share my videos with your gardening and flower friends. See you next week. Bye.